She reigned like a queen on the streets of Harlem. That name, skulking down alleyways and jazz clubs, murmured in the reverent hushes that hinted at both terror and respect. Born and raised in the heights of 1880s Martinique, Stephanie St. Clair was not just prominent queenpin in a fever-stricken underworld. She was its Tsarina, born weeks after Placeroque-era New York published The Execution of a Mexican Outlaw. An interesting game was playing in a male world. She not only played, but successfully, and this is her story. Stephanie St. Clair was a Black American born in 1897 on the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe, and few early details are known about her life before she arrived to Harlem as an adult at age 33. Yet, what is known read like the prologue to an epic tale. When she was young, Stephanie's family lived in a very negative environment that had her knowing deep within her heart of hearts that the life presented to here wasn't limited. Maybe it was the poverty, or maybe, just maybe, she heard America calling her. Though either way, the winds of fate would soon bring her to Harlem in the 1920s, where she first began. Harlem was buzzing. The sound of jazz floated on the breeze, and street corners thrived with cultural accomplishment. It was the Harlem Renaissance. An age of innovation and passions were high here. But there was another side to Harlem underneath the rhythm and color, a darker stripe, where crime rubbed shoulders with opportunity, without much daylight or room for Jesus in between. It was here where Stephanie would ultimately find her calling. Too little was it to be expected from the Caribbean immigrant. Her family name, that was her house, the one with no connections. She was just one of many in a vast ocean of fresh-faced noobs. But Stephanie St. Clair was different from others. She would arise, and when she did, the city will know her. She was just another immigrant, on the surface. No family, no connections. But Stephanie St. Clair, she possessed something no one else did. An intellect as cold and calculating as any grandiose puppeteer, the unflinching will to challenge anybody who came within her path. From Harlem Underworld, she found her calling in the numbers racket. It was just, on the surface at least, a straightforward game of betting on a 3-digit number and hoping for good luck with lightning speed. But underneath, for those who could manage this beast, it was a gold mine. And Stephanie? She was not only great, she was relentless. In a land of underestimated women, she glided through silently. She made herself familiar with the streets, gained trust, and committed to memory who could be trusted and who couldn't. Most importantly, how she for others would become a necessity. Before long, she was building an empire. Her name had gone from being whispered under the breath, untold to reverence. A couple of good men, that was all she needed, who feared her more than they did anyone else. Harlem was nothing if not numbers in all aspects, and some instances of the game were life or death. It was an opportunity, if severely limited and dangerous, for people with few other options. But she ruled this world, St. Clair saw to that. She knew all the components of human nature, their hopes, greed, and their despair. She felt it, touched nerves like a master playing an instrument. But with success came scrutiny, and not all of it was positive. Both the Italian and Jewish mafias had cast covetous glares at Harlem, desiring a share of her action. Chief among them, terror of New York, Dutch Schultz. There was a savage in Schultz, and he didn't like the idea of any woman ruling Harlem's kingpin rackets. St. Clair was not going to be denied this. Times she even went so far as to run ads in the local papers that made fun of both Schultz and his warnings. Even though the majority of Gangsters was about that life, Steph did it with a smile on, and she had sworn to all her enemies, "Come and take me." Her men exchanged shootouts with Schultz's goons, and she kept her business afloat despite his trying the squeeze. She also was no holds barred in making sure her empire remained safe, bribing police and city officials. Harlem was her domain, and she reigned supreme. If you want to be successful in this world, you need the right niggas on your side, and Stephanie knew that all too well. She bonded with a who's who of New York big-time hoodlums, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky. Bargaining with devils was a risky game, but it won her empire. She knew exactly when to be nice and when to attack. But Schultz, he wasn't done with her. A powder keg that was going to explode, the Bronx as well, and blow it did. It would be his obsession to win Harlem away from the numbers racket that would ultimately bring Schultz down. And not Gavone, but the government. But still, she stood the following morning, my Stephanie. Power, however, the power I want to wield, it comes at a price. By the end of the late 1930s, Stephanie's empire was collapsing. By 1939, the authorities had been finally almost busted her operation, and she was arrested for extortion. She then languished in jail for 6 long years. 6 years imagining all that she had made and squandered. By the time she was released in 1945, Harlem had a new look. She had changed. The streets that had bent to her did not wait. The world had moved on. There was no empire, and the men who had been terrified of her were dead or in jail. But she was never to rule again, yet her chapter had more left. Stephanie St. Clair was more than a gangster. She was a survivor, a woman who took what the world said she could not have and called it hers. She fought the odds, played against New York's best minds, and left a legacy that continues to murmur through Harlem now.